Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre a la para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and
George. All right, welcome back. It is another edition of the unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com. And we've got Josh, we've got Eddie, we've got George, we got myself, Carrie Murdoch here. First things first. OU played a little basketball game last night in College Station. And to be honest, guys, I was kind of encouraged by what I saw. Other than, Jeremiah Fears, I kind of liked a lot of what I saw last night. I like Dayton Forsythe. I like Jalen Moore being aggressive from the beginning of the game. I didn't like the rebounding. But I felt like it was a team that actually had some direction.
Yeah, I think at times it did, but then it just, I think the problem with OU Hoops right now is there's a couple things. One, Jeremiah Fears has to be better. And I've said that from the start. It's like this team goes as Jeremiah Fears goes, and he just hasn't been as good in conference play at times.
And I don't know what you do because his confidence is just gone.
Yeah, you got to build it back up. He's got to play well this week against Vanderbilt. And I still think he's a good player. He just had a bad night, and that's going to happen every once in a while, and OU wasn't able to overcome it. And that's the second point, is they don't have a good enough big men to compete, I think, in the SEC. And part of it is the SEC is just an unbelievable conference right now. But, I think Sam Godwin's a nice player, great guy, but he's just not, and we've said this from the start, is like he's not a starting level center in this conference, and it's tough to overcome that. And, he gets in foul trouble. Wagyu, is that how you say his name? Wagyu gets in trouble, in foul trouble as well. Luke Northweather, Eddie, you kind of said it. His body language at times just seems like it's almost like he's like, is he there? Is he playing in the game? So it's just like I just think that they have a lack of size that kills them. But Jalen Moore's been playing great. The reality of the situation is they got to win 5 more games, and they've got 11 games left. 9 of them are against ranked opponents. 4 of them are against top 15 teams, and 3 of them are against top 5 teams.
And if you're an NCAA team, you've got to beat some ranked opponents along the way.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. They got to win this weekend, though. Saturday is a must-win.
They'll be favored. So, I don't know. We'll see. I thought last night was pretty disgusting.
I kind of agree with Eddie on this. There was times where you're like, okay, they kind of got it together, and then there was times where it was like 5-minute runs where it just was atrocious.
Well, they just go
basketball.
through droughts where they can't score, and when you're going to get out rebounded by 28, and you're not going to make a whole lot of free throws or even get to the free throw line very much, and then have the turnovers in the last 3 minutes, you're not going to beat a top 15 team on the road that played bad last night.
Yeah.
Like they were lucky that they were even in the game. I don't think that A&M, as poorly as they shoot the ball, I don't think that they're going to go, whatever they were last night, 4 for 20 from behind the arc. They missed a lot of open shots. So I think,
but they also, to be fair, A&M made up for it by getting to the line 30 times or something?
Yeah, they were 29 to 35,
which is crazy.
Which 82%, I guess you could round it up to 83%. They're not an 83% free throw shooting team.
No,
which I don't know. It is what it is. I didn't expect them to win. They covered, I guess.
Last night didn't make me feel any better or worse about the team.
I did think that they did show some stuff. To only be down 1 at halftime was kind of a godsend, but it was also in the back of your brain kind of thinking like this should be a double-digit deficit right now.
Well, they were not good coming out of half.
At the end of that, yeah, but they still rebounded and got back in it. A&M is about as bad of a matchup as you could possibly ask for.
Yeah.
A lot of size.
But that's a lot of teams in the SEC. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like, I think ultimately if we look back and OU misses the NCAA tournament, one, it'll be because they lost to A&M at home. They should have never lost that game at home. But two, I think you could go all the way back and say they just didn't, get who they needed to in the portal at that position, like inside. Like, they just don't have a difference maker in the post, and I just think it kills them on the boards. And I'm not saying they have to be a million times better rebounding, but to get out rebounded, I think it was the stat
Didn't
was
Forsyth lead them in rebounding last night?
OU had 19 total rebounds in the game, just 19. A&M had 21 offensive rebounds alone.
Yeah.
Like, that's terrible.
Well, look, this is where I stand on it. I thought, Jalen Moore is now like a centerpiece, which he should have been all along, even in the first half. Just, he's not sitting around waiting for his turn to, turn it up or whatever you want to say. But Jeremiah Fears being a non-factor, scoring 0 points, like, you're not going to win. And look, Porter did a good job of taking him off the floor and, letting Forsyth play more because he did a decent job at times. But at some point, Jeremiah Fears has to realize what he can and can't get away with on a college basketball court.
Well, he's not going to do it in 17 games. I think he's still a very, very young player, and you see that all the time.
But he continually just takes it to the basket and gets blocked. Like, how many times in a row, how many games in a row does he have to do that before he realizes, maybe I should, pull up in the lane and shoot a jumper?
Probably about a year and a half. I don't think it's going to just change overnight. I mean, weren't we saying a couple weeks ago that they need to start taking it to the basketball, get fouled, get to the free throw line? That was something that he was supposed to excel at, and he missed both free throws last night.
Yeah.
I think it's just a confidence thing. He's expecting to get a call instead of going through the body.
But everybody on that team can be better finishing around the rim. I mean, this is one of the worst finishing teams around the rim that I've ever seen.
I think that's college basketball in general, but a lot of it has to do because they don't have a big guy that can get tip backs.
Correct. I mean, how many times last night did
watch the Kentucky game last night?
Just
against Tennessee, and they're big inside.
Just how many times last night did it feel like A&M would miss something at the rim, and then one of their big guys got a rebound and just put it right back in?
Yeah,
like that happens a lot.
That happens when you give up 21 offensive rebounds.
A lot of the rebounds were just over people. Like they're just rebounds that come off the rim, and they're just standing behind someone boxed out, and they just jump up and grab it.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Everybody's pissed off at Porter. They want everybody fired. It doesn't really matter what we say.
Good attitude.
Yeah, great attitude.
Well, it's a reality. Even if they beat Vanderbilt, people won't say shit.
Basketball is not real popular right now. I mean, there's no getting around that.
Nothing's popular.
Nothing is popular. No one's going to listen to this show.
Hopefully.
Because OU sucks at everything.
I watched basketball last night.
That was probably the problem.
I watched now, they made a run when I tuned in. I kind of almost took credit, and then it started to go downhill, and I was like, I'm not saying anything. Just gonna abstain from that conversation.
Eddie, what makes you happy? What would you like to talk about today?
Nothing right now, to be honest with you.
Jesus.
Just go hang out in the conference room?
Sure.
I mean, you're welcome to if you don't want to do the show. All right, Josh. A little bit of an inverted show here. We start with basketball, but I guess we need to address everything that's going on with Jaden O'Neal because, I think we have kind of, not that we've ever reported like OU's dropping him, but the 2 quarterback thing. I mean, clearly, when you offer somebody else and you got a kid that's been committed this long, and you have a new offensive coordinator, let's face it, let's not ignore that part of it because I think everybody just jumps on the what's going to happen, or are you guys right? You have a brand new offensive coordinator. He has to have the ability to bring in the players that he feels can run his system the best. And obviously, they've stayed with Jaden O'Neal. His visits come. He's still committed. He's saying all the right things on social media. And right now, he's the only quarterback that is committed to the University of Oklahoma. That's the other thing about this. So I think I I don't think we jumped the gun, but we're just trying to be realistic about this. Where do you think things are right now with Jaden O'Neal, with Ben Arbuckle, with Bentley? Like, let's just put it all out there.
Yeah. Well, there's so much in play. Like, it's not just a situation where, okay, this is, like this kid's going to make a decision and that kid will make a decision and then everybody goes their own separate ways. Everybody knows there are some rumors out there about Jaden O'Neal. Maybe he's going to pull kind of a Kevin Sperry move, and I mean that in the sense of he could move closer to Oklahoma. Like, that rumor has been out there for a while. I don't think I'm telling anybody something they haven't heard about, on either on the Crimson Corner or on Twitter or wherever they may be. That rumor's been out there. And so I think that's kind of the interesting thing here is you don't have a lot of time to just let this maybe naturally play out either way. Like, Oklahoma has to make the decision of, okay, we're going to take both or we're going to take one or the other, and who that one is going to be. Like,
and if we take both,
has to do a lot of stuff on the fly.
And Josh, the other thing is, if we take both, does that have consequences that we don't, that we have to take into account, take into consideration?
Absolutely. I mean, like, you take two. Okay, does that send a signal to Jet New, the guy that Ben Arbuckle had a real relationship with and brought in, got him to flip away from Oklahoma State? Does that impact Michael Hawkins? Like, does he look at that and say, well, why do we need two? I'm here. Whatever happens with John Mateer, I plan to be here. I think Michael Hawkins has made that pretty clear that, he sees himself as, one of their future kind of cogs of that team. So I think it's an interesting thing. But when you look at all of this, I think, and for those that that aren't members, aren't on the board, I reported on Monday, and it was based on something kind of conversations amongst the four of us. I don't want to say it was certainly wasn't all mine or anything like that, but it was clear that Oklahoma liked Bo Bentley a lot more than I had initially thought. It felt kind of like, okay, this kid's a big Oklahoma fan. Like, he's been around the program. He knows some people. Oklahoma's kind of doing a solid, making sure that, hey, if something went wrong with Jaden O'Neal down the road, hey, we can pivot. Like, we've got a guy here that we made clear to him early on we liked him. I think it's more than that. I think Oklahoma wants to bring Bo Bentley into the fold. And so that immediately asks the question of, well, what does that mean to Jaden O'Neal? And I was clear in the reporting that I didn't know the answer to that part yet. And I still don't think I know the answer to that. I know some people kind of jumped out. I've been told there were some reports of like, oh yeah, they're moving on from Jaden. I haven't heard that. Like, I have not been told that. There's nothing about Jaden's actions since the visit. He obviously, and we'll get into it. They got a commitment from one of his good buddies, Daniel Odom from St. John Bosco in California. They're recruiting Jabari Brady, a guy that he plays 7-on-7 with. So there's nothing about his actions or anybody around him's actions that says this is a problem. This is not going to go well. So I don't know what that means. My question is more of beyond, okay, how does that impact how people look at the quarterback room? Guys, 2 top 20 quarterbacks, that's a lot of money to put into one position. That's not something that a lot of schools have done or done successfully. You go back and look at it, really, there's 2 examples. Texas in 2020, which is like a different era of recruiting back when they got Hudson Card and Jaquindon Jackson. And the other example is Alabama with Dylan Lonergan and Eli Holstein. And again, little different time, and I think everybody knows Alabama was getting a little bit of a Saban discount on a lot of their guys. They weren't having to pony up an NIL the way some schools were. Now they're kind of back to having to live like everybody else does. So it's more of a I'm not saying that Oklahoma doesn't want to take 2, that they don't plan to take 2. I'm saying I don't know if I believe that's a realistic thing that will go from January of this year to when those guys will sign wherever they plan to sign in December.
Well, I think you look at the history of the NIL era at Oklahoma. You have Dylan Gabriel. He comes in here. He's the guy. There's no competition. It's just like Jeff Lebby, Dylan Gabriel, match made in heaven. We go with it. Then the next in line is Jackson Arnold, and he's going to come in and he's going to be a backup. And I think a lot of people thought, George, I know, a lot of people thought, well, Jackson's probably getting a whole bunch of money, but I think we kind of found out like it wasn't as much as we might have thought it was, as for him to sit and be a backup. Like his real money came this last year when he became the starter, and they moved on, and Dylan left, and like I don't know how the NIL stuff would work out with two guys, especially two highly rated guys.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on it. Just what's interesting to me is it seems like, and I've never talked to Jaden O'Neal, I've never talked to Bo Bentley, so I don't really know. But from what Josh has said about Bo Bentley, and then from what we've seen from Jaden O'Neal, it feels like two guys that really, really want to be at OU. So maybe they'd be willing to take some sort of discount. And I think from OU's perspective, the most likely scenario is they're going to lose at least two quarterbacks after next season, whether that's John Mateer going to the NFL, or maybe Michael Hawkins takes over as the starter, or he enters the portal. Cole Gonzalez, I don't know what his eligibility is, but I don't think he'll stick around. Jet New, what does he do after 1 year? So I think that of the four guys they have on campus now, my bet is two of them are gone after next season. So if you're Oklahoma, it's a no-brainer. If you can somehow pull off getting two of them, you do it. But making the money work, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know, how much they would, garner on the market. Like, if Georgia wants Jaden O'Neal, and Oklahoma's taking two guys, Georgia probably could offer maybe a little bit more money than Oklahoma can. But if Jaden O'Neal really wants to be at Oklahoma and wants to compete, maybe he comes despite there being a pay decrease. I don't know. But it's an interesting situation. It does feel like, one of those two is coming to Oklahoma, I would assume.
Well, it also brings up, like you said, Georgia has just offered Jaden O'Neal.
It also, we need to be clear too. I feel like we're talking this as if Bo Bentley's already committed. He is not.
Yeah, right.
Not committed. Fair. We don't even know.
We're talking about if they take him as a commitment,
right,
and he ends up with Jaden O'Neal in the same class. And if he does commit, and you do have two quarterbacks, you're not just talking about Georgia. You're going to see vultures come from everywhere trying to see if they can pick off one of those quarterbacks.
And I think what's interesting, Josh, too, is with Jaden O'Neal, it seems like he's been one of OU's best recruiters. I mean,
he has been.
He's been very involved talking to a lot of these kids.
Guys, I want to say, Eddie, I want to say we talked about that in a recruiting report like a week or two ago, like how skilled he seems to be at this. Like, he is a very good recruiter. And anybody that's talked to Jaden, like, he is very easygoing, very, I hate to say it, but like very Cali bro. Like, he's very easy to talk to, very laid back, not the, we've seen the guys like, I'm going to recruit everybody, and they just piss everybody off. He doesn't do that. Like, he really has a very cool way about him. Like, players that I talked to really like him. I mean, we talked about his relationship with Caden Jones. I know, it's not like he and Mason James had a good time around each other this weekend. So I think that is a commendable aspect of his whole situation. And you wonder if something were to happen, what that means to Oklahoma. Like, how does that impact other guys? I think that's something. And I don't want to get in front of it. I'm just saying that's something Oklahoma, if they are going to take Bo Bentley and kind of roll the dice of, okay, let's see how this plays out with two quarterbacks, that's something they got to take account of. Like, it's a real consideration.
Jaden O'Neal has and I think we said it after we interviewed him on the YouTube show, just as far as getting it and his role in, kind of being an interviewee. He has a lot of Caleb Williams qualities just in how he handles himself from what I've seen with the media. So you like that. That certainly plays a part, I think, in the overall complex of being a quarterback, and especially at a place like the University of Oklahoma. But, I don't think anybody knows what they're going to do. In a best situation, they would love to bring both of them in. I just don't know if it's going to be feasible.
All right. We'll continue to monitor this stuff. We'll continue to reach out to Jaden. Jaden, you're welcome to come on any YouTube show anytime to talk about it, podcast, whatever. So let's just see what happens. First, you got to get Bo Bentley to commit before this is even an issue, and then we'll go from there. So, I will say this, Josh, just from the junior day, I mean, there's a commitment that's picked up, wide receiver, and it just seems like with all the social media that's out there, we've talked so much about it, like how big this year is going to be to kind of have success on the offensive end and get back to Oklahoma's reputation as an offensive school. And a lot of that rests on Ben Arbuckle's shoulders, but it does seem like they're picking up an awful lot of momentum after this junior day.
It's been a really good start, guys. In the conversations I've had, the thing that I can tell you is, and it again, to date myself terribly and sound much less cool than I want to sound, vibes are high. Like these guys sound good. Like everything sounds like, man, it was amazing. And being around the players, talking to Noah Best, the big offensive lineman, him talking about being around Ryan Foje and how excited Ryan Foje is about his first few weeks on campus. And I think, again, like there is positive momentum. Now, Oklahoma, it felt like that this time last year too. Headed into the SEC, coming off, a real improvement year. So I don't know what that means ultimately, but I definitely don't think there's anybody down there like hanging their heads or like, oh, this is all trending in the wrong direction, or this has happened or that's happened. That's not the feeling I get. Like these guys, from players that have been there a bunch of times, like the Caden Joneses, the Aljor Miles, you go down the list, to the guys that had never been there before, Kamarian Johnson, some of those type of guys, they were like, it was amazing. Like we just couldn't believe kind of the atmosphere and how close everybody was. Like there's nothing down there that you're like, okay, this is coming apart at the seams. That's not what any of these guys have picked up and conveyed to me.
What's to be made of a guy that we've talked about before, KJ Ford? It seems like maybe it's even more real that Oklahoma could go into Duncanville, a place that they have not had a whole lot of success.
Guys, I heard from somebody in the Dallas area last night that just hit me up and was like, there are rumors going around that he's going to commit. And it was somebody that I take seriously enough. I was like, well, let me check with a few people. And I don't think that's happening. I don't think they're there yet. But I think Oklahoma leads. I do. And I think he, along with the Jake Kruel kid from IMG that Miguel Chavis was back out to see yesterday, I think those are their two top edge guys. That's the guys they really like. And they're going to be in a dogfight for both. I'm not saying Oklahoma's getting them for sure or anything like that. Like there's a lot of hills to climb. But I think they're off to a really good start. Like they've got it again. I think all these guys, if Oklahoma had gone 9-3 last year, they'd have a few more commitments. They wouldn't be dealing with it because all these kids have to deal with all these other staffs. Like, yeah, man, I know you enjoyed that visit, but and they have to deal with that negative recruiting that they're just getting hammered with. But at the same time, I mean, Daniel Odom, he's a top 250 player in the country. He's got a bunch of good offers, and he went right in with Oklahoma yesterday. So I think there's a lot you can build on. And like I said, KJ Ford is a guy that I thought was a long shot. Now, guys, you can go back to the Alabama game. He was supposed to come to that game, and then I think there was a general feeling of like, we don't want to watch OU just get pummeled. Like, we like OU. We want to go talk to Coach Chavis after the game. And I'm not saying like that's exactly his words or anything, but I think there was a feeling of like, that's probably not going to go well for OU. We'll go to, what was it? Was A&M Texas no, that wasn't A&M Texas. I can't remember. He went somewhere else that weekend. I can't remember where it was, but kind of made a late switch. And from what I gathered, I think there was a lot of momentum born out of that Alabama win where it was like, oh, okay, those guys are pretty good. Like, they just handled Alabama. And I think it changed the way he and his family and kind of everybody around them was kind of looking at Oklahoma at that point.
What's to be said of the guy that did commit, that did jump in coming out of the Junior Day weekend? Daniel Odom, 6'2", 175, one of the powerhouses in the state of California at St. John Bosco.
Yeah, again, a buddy of Jaden O'Neal. I mean, Jaden was, I think, one of the first people to tweet about it after the news broke. what I can say watching him, and again, I had heard that visit went well, but I won't pretend that like I was prepared for that. That was a little surprising to me. But in watching his tape and the stuff I've seen, guys, he reminds me a ton of Joaquin Iglesias. That's who I see when I watch him play. Kind of that 6'1", 6'2", sturdy frame, really accelerates really easy, moves, kind of his transitions are very natural, good route runner, but is maybe not like, okay, he's got huge top end speed or hugely explosive, if they throw the ball up in the air. He's not that kind of guy, but he's really, really refined. Like, he's one of those guys that if he came in as a freshman and, got 300 or 400 snaps, I wouldn't be stunned. Like, I think he has that kind of immediate impact ability, as to where maybe like a guy like Elijah Thomas in the current freshman class was a guy I like a lot. I like his potential more, but he's probably not as ready. So it's just kind of a varied bag there.
Joaquin Iglesias was like my favorite player growing up when I was a kid. He was awesome.
I think he's one of the more underrated guys of like the Stoops era. He was such a good player, and people kind of forget about him.
Malcolm Kelly
I
and
brought
him.
it up on the board. I brought it up on the board, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, he's the guy that got nailed against Florida." I'm like, "No, that's Manny Johnson."
That's Manny Johnson.
Yeah. Like, and you're like, people just don't remember this guy who was a second-round pick.
Yeah, Joaquin Iglesias was a baller, dude.
He was a good player. I think played for a year or two with Chicago.
He had great stats at OU.
Yeah, I mean, he played along with Malcolm Kelly. And of course that 2008 national championship game that you mentioned. Ryan Broyles was a redshirt freshman on that team, and you had Jermaine Gresham at tight end. So it was a decent receiving core. It wasn't elite. I mean, like they didn't really have a Mark Clayton. So I mean, Joaquin Iglesias is a good, really good college player. But
he had his senior year. He had 74 receptions, 1,150 yards, and 10 touchdowns. You would take that tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I mean, he would be a
massive game against Baylor and Kansas that year.
His junior year, he had 68.
And Missouri, he went over 125 in all three.
He had 68 receptions, 907 yards, and 5 touchdowns his junior year.
Fast forward to 2009 when they didn't have a damn receiver on that roster except for Ryan Broyles.
Do you guys? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure I'm the only one that remembers. Joaquin Iglesias was a late Bobby Jack Wright guy. They offered him in January of his senior year. Like, he was little known. He was committed to UTEP when they offered him.
Was he from El Paso?
And he was from Killeen.
Okay.
So, but yeah, he wasn't well known. I want to say they had missed out on somebody who I'm going to forget right now, but they went after him. Obviously, he flipped pretty quickly. And I'm reading some of the old stories, and what's funny, he initially canceled the official visit he was going to take to Oklahoma, like in mid-January. And then Oklahoma, and for the reasons I'm reading he was talking about, he was talking about it was going to take him a long time to get on the field. I want to say he played as a freshman. Like, I want to say he was almost, not like, he was a starter as a freshman, but like he had a role pretty quickly, if I remember right. But kind of like Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims had the same problem because he was the year after Jaden Hazelwood and Trajan Bridges and Theo Weiss, and OU really had to convince Marvin that he was going to have a role. And it sounds like with Iglesias, they kind of had the same deal, and obviously both ended up being fairly high-round draft picks.
I wonder what he's up to nowadays.
I don't know. He had 19 receptions for 290 as a freshman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What Joaquin is up to these days?
Yeah.
I'm sure we could find out. We could get him on Family Business, maybe.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be fun.
I'm trying to think of where we were headed there before the Joaquin Iglesias tangent.
We were just talking about recruiting and
Daniel Odom.
Oh, okay. Josh, I mean, anything else from junior day that just really stood out that was a real positive for Oklahoma?
Kaiden Hall?
I would say, what's that?
Hall.
Yeah, that's a big one, guys. And I don't know how many people have watched his tape. That he is huge. Like Eddie, he kind of reminds me of like a more athletic Kendall Daniels. Like watching Kendall back in high school, and you're like, oh God, he's like 6'3", 200 pounds. He's just flying around and killing people. And, he's doing that in Florida against, good athletes. So watching him track all these guys down, I was super, super impressed. So, he's already talking about his official visit, when he's going to set that up. And I guess we just briefly should mention Chancellor Barclay, a guy that camped at OU last summer, is the first known official visit that's been set up for June 20th, which I've got to assume is going to be barbecue weekend. So they're already starting to lay the groundwork for officials in the summer. That's how rapid this is all happening. But yeah, with Kaiden Hall, like I said, he's already talking about setting up his official. Wouldn't shock me at all if he's another June 20th guy where they usually bring in 20, 25 of their top guys.
Okay, I want to talk about some of the coaches out on the road a little bit on the other side. But first off, Eddie has a grumpy attitude but great vision, which we appreciate.
Don't have a grumpy attitude.
You're getting better.
New opportunity, new year here. Have I ever told you guys about my friends at Enjoy Vision? They're trying to save $1,000 on LASIK for you out there. Glasses, contacts, that is very last season. It's time to see every play, every highlight, every win with crystal clear vision. All you got to do is schedule your free consultation today. Go to enjoyvision.com, letter N-J-O-Y, vision.com, and start the new year with a fresh perspective and keep an extra $1,000 in your pocket. While you're at it, Enjoy Vision. This is where Suter Sagoop LASIKs.
When you went in for your LASIK, did you have any idea what the procedure was like?
No.
You just knew if they gave
I knew nothing about it.
So when they gave you drugs, did it make you more fearful?
No. Not at all.
He was very comfortable.
That was awesome.
Well, after he stole that second one. I remember when you had it, you were worried about the whole eye cover thing and how you were going to get around. But that came off pretty fast. I was surprised at how quickly you recovered.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What eye cover?
Yeah, you can't touch your eyes and stuff. Everything's
I didn't wear
real.
any cover though. You just can't do it.
Yeah,
it's very weird. It's worth it though.
It is. I've had it done, but probably not as well as they did it for you at Enjoy. By the way, also want to mention CodyDrugRx.com. If you guys are out there, new year, trying to lose some weight, and you're looking for a custom GLP-1 weight loss medication, then they can take care of you. Cody Drug will use their state-of-the-art sterile lab and then overnight it to your house on ice. So it's kind of like just getting drugs from Amazon, and you're going to lose weight. So visit them at CodyDrugRx.com. If you're not sure what supplements you need, if you're looking to feel a little bit better just day to day, reach out online for a consultation, and they'll guide you on the types and amounts of supplements tailored to your individual needs. And also go check them out on Instagram at CodyDrugRx, where our guy Will sit there and tell you about some of the great supplements that you can get to help you feel better overall from your day-to-day grind. But yeah, mainly if you go to your doctor, tell them you want your prescription filled with Cody Drug. They are licensed in Oklahoma and in Texas, so even if you're an Okie, you can use our good friend Will and CodyDrugRx.com to get that custom GLP-1 weight loss medication and have it overnighted to you on ice. So thanks to Will. They've got over 200,000 Instagram followers, so a lot of great information on there. Go check them out, CodyDrugRx. Okay, so coaches, lots of pictures coming out on Twitter. We've been tracking a lot of stuff on the message boards. We've seen a lot of, is Bill Bedenbaugh going to smile on this visit? There was a very large smile from him in one of the pictures. So he let loose a little bit, but saw him with our guy Toa Katoa. I think that was last night that he was visiting, but lot of coaches out on the road. They've been all over the country basically, down in Florida and Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma. But what's the first takeaway that you have from the coaches' visit so far, Josh?
I would say just how much there seems to be a very clear revolving door where they seem very orchestrated with it, because there's only been like one visit where I can remember. I told you guys about it, where it kind of surprised me there wasn't a coach there, but it seems like they've been very organized. Like, this guy should be here, these guys should be here. Like, there hasn't been a lot of that where like Todd Bates is visiting a wide receiver from Illinois, like just stuff you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is he there? So I think they've done a really good job with that, and that's only more complicated because of, obviously they've got J.P. Lossman out there recruiting, filling in for where Zach Alley's spot would be. So they've kind of had to balance that out a little bit, but I do think it helps, the Lossman thing, because he's one of their go-to guys whenever anybody is on campus. So he knows a lot of these guys, whether it's a wide receiver from Cali or a linebacker from Florida, like whatever it may be, he kind of can bridge that gap pretty easily. And I think they've done a really good job organizing it. And you mentioned Toa Katoa is a really good example. So yesterday, Brent Venables is by the school to see him, along with Joe John Finley, who's kind of one of the area recruiters, and then J.P. Lossman's there as well. Then at night, Bill Bedenbow goes in and sees the family and stops in and sees them. And again, anybody who's seen those pictures, it's not a shocking deal that Toa Katoa is a large human being. Like,
and his family is massive.
Yeah, his family are, they're sturdy people. Let's put it that way. Like, they are, nobody's coming into that house with any bad ideas.
It's like when they go to visit the Rock's family in Hobbs and Shaw. I don't know if you guys are big fans of the Fast and Furious franchises.
I feel like we're approaching racism here, but okay, let's
No, I mean, they go and visit the Rock's family in Hawaii, and everybody's massive.
The one thing I was going to say that I noticed in the picture, I don't know if any of you guys caught this, is I think the Toa household is a no shoes policy household, and the only one wearing shoes in the photo is Bill Bedenbaugh.
Oh, so you lost him.
Yeah.
It's over
Oh,
with.
no.
He's rocking the Jordans, I think, in the photo, and no one else is wearing shoes.
Wasn't that always kind of a weird thing? You go over to somebody's house and they're like, take your shoes off.
Yeah.
You didn't have any Asian friends?
Yeah, I did, but they didn't do that.
George, I want you to know this will probably become like no beaches. It was a thing in OU recruiting for a long time. Like, you can't get anybody because of no beaches. Was like a never-ending storyline. Now it's going to be, if this kid doesn't go to Oklahoma, it will be because Bill didn't take his shoes off in the house. Like, I want you to know that is coming down the pipe.
Maybe the mom just said, like, take off those slides. We're not having slides in the photos or something.
I mean, they were all just, never mind. A weird thing that I just noticed is that Bill Bedenbaugh was the only one wearing shoes in the photo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's that weird, but
I bet his mom's
good
pissed.
Catch. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm always focused on if he's going to crack a smile in one of the photos. He just has the same face every
I think
time.
you're too obsessed with that, though, because I think Bill does smile. It's just not your normal smile. Like, I think he's always...
You think that's a smile? That's his smile?
His smile is like...
just a perfectly straight lip line?
That's his smile. He's happy inside.
I don't think that he's a grump or anything. Anyway, so Toa Katoa, we got kind of sidetracked there. But, and the other thing is, Josh, we've seen guys getting visited on multiple days, like the kid at IMG, and then I think a picture came out today with Chavis visiting him again. So it's like they've just been, as you said, and I was thrown off because DeMarco Murray was visiting like a 6'8" offensive lineman, and I thought, my God, that's the biggest running back I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, we stopped to see Aaron Thomas in Arizona. Yeah, and you do bring up, an example. People are like, well, Josh was just saying they're not doing that. DeMarco obviously recruits a lot of Nevada, Arizona. Like, he's got a lot of connections in that area.
He's from Las Vegas, yeah.
Now I will say, because I know people will come for Kerry, there were visits last week to Jake Krull, and then Miguel Chavis came back in this week and saw Jake Krull. Like, I want to say they saw him like Thursday of last week, if I remember from the story that we put up, and then again he was back in yesterday. So they are adhering to the rules, NCAA. I know you're listening. I know you're out there, but they are absolutely, like, you can tell by where they are going, the guys they are zeroing in on. Like, KJ Ford, like, there's not a week that's going to go by they won't go by Duncanville. They're going to be down there as much as they possibly can. Same with Jake Krull. You look at some of the offensive linemen. They rolled out for Jonathan Hatton yesterday. They are putting in the work at the places where you can tell they're kind of zeroed in.
Any kind of, you guys did a recruiting report on Monday. Any kind of intel that you put out there on the board, or things that have popped up in the last couple of days that's been kind of continues to be promising for Oklahoma recruiting?
I don't think that's anything. Like, I still love where OU is with Caden Jones. I still love where they are with Mason James, Aljur Miles. Like, I can see the outline of this offensive class, which is going to surprise people. I can see the offensive class coming together. Like, I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on what that's going to look like. I think Caden Jones will be part of the running back room. I think Mason James will be part of things. I think Aljur Miles and those two could join Daniel Odom. Like, there are some things. Jaden Warren out of the Houston area, I think, is absolutely a possibility as well. Emmett Jones went and he was actually supposed to be there this weekend, as was Toa Katoa, and they had to kind of make some last-second changes with Toa. Toa basically decided he hadn't been to a Texas Junior Day. He went to OU's last year, decided to go to Texas as he's going to come back up for a spring practice. He was abundantly clear that everything is all good with he and OU. And then Jaden Warren, his parents just had to work over the weekend, so they couldn't bring him. So he ended up doing an in-home visit with Emmett Jones on Thursday evening or Friday evening. I can't quite remember which. So they've, that base has kind of been covered. But then, you look at Noah Best, Puli Primus on the offensive line, Toa Katoa. Like, the offensive class, there are some variables, and some stuff won't go exactly the way you see it. But I feel like you could probably hit at about a 70% rate of like what that class is going to look like, come August. Now, the defensive class, I think there's a lot more up in the air. I think some of that is they're chasing maybe a few more high level, like really, like I said, Jake Krull's a top 60 player in the country. KJ Ford's one of the best defensive linemen in Texas. Like, they are going to have to battle some, so it's a little harder to see how that's going to play out. But you're starting to get a better picture of it.
Josh, I know we talked about the quarterback situation at the top of the show, but just overall thoughts on Ben Arbuckle so far and just him as a recruiter. Like, what's the early feedback? Because I know he's not only been looking at quarterbacks, but a lot of these offensive guys he's been out visiting too.
Yeah, and he's made several stops around Oklahoma, and I've talked to some of those coaches that were super impressed by him. Just kind of talked about, like, very easygoing guy, very easy to talk to. I mean, obviously, George, you sat down and talked with him as not as longer than anybody's spoken to him yet since he got in Norman. But I do think he is connected with a lot of these guys. And what I continue to hear from a lot of the players is he's just very honest. Like, he just kind of tells them, this is what I see, this is how I'm going to do this. We've got some, like there was a wide receiver I knew he went and saw that Oklahoma seems to like, but maybe isn't at the top of their board. So it kind of was like, hey, we want you to come down. We want you to come see everything. We'll see where it goes from there. And so I think that was a good starting point, because you don't set up those false expectations where for years I think that was I don't want to say a problem is strong, but it was something that Oklahoma occasionally fell into. And then it creates these narratives, especially within the state of Oklahoma, where, OU doesn't care about these kids and they don't even tell them, what's going on and blah, blah, blah. If you're just honest, most of the guys are like, yeah, they told me the score. They told me the deal. That's okay. And you don't get some of this resentment because guys feel like they're left in the dark. So I think he's impressed people just kind of being transparent and being, kind of what you saw in that interview with you and Joe. Like, he was just very kind of open and just talked, and seemed like a very kind of all shucks guy.
It feels like he's gonna. I mean, and we'll see how it plays out. It's only a month into the job for him, but I think I could see him connecting very well with a lot of recruits, just because of his youth, but like you said, his personality, and his personality is a little bit different than Brent Venables, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No, again, I think that's good in some ways because, like, okay, this guy, this quarterback or this offensive lineman, like, maybe in his case, Ben Arbuckle's kind of our closer. Maybe in his case, Brent Venables. Like, you can do a little bit of everything rather than just like everybody is basically making the same pitch in the same way.
Yeah, I was kind of curious. I'm glad you asked that question just about Ben and I'm also curious kind of about the evaluation. Like you said, he's visiting guys that might not be at the top of their list, but guys he wants to keep on the back burner. Kind of shows you that he's not afraid to kind of dig in and do the deeper work on stuff like that, which is you got to take what you can in figuring out kind of what he is as a coach and how he operates. So, do we want to get into? Is there anything else in recruiting you want to hit on? Do we want to go ahead and get on the defensive side of the ball and coaching staff and all that? And I would assume, Josh, that defensively they don't have any problems going out there without a de facto defensive coordinator with Brent at the helm.
No, I really haven't heard any guys that are like, well, we got to see what happens there. It's all been very, very, just accepted and kind of like, oh, yeah, they'll get it done when they get it done. Even from the signees, when I saw Tristan Haynes in San Antonio, there was no like, well, I don't know what it's going to look like. I think everybody kind of knows the score. And then it's just about seeing. Now, at some point, they've got to get a linebackers coach to start recruiting linebackers because I would say in recruiting, that's one of the more foundational positions for this class because they haven't hit a bunch of numbers here in the last few years. And they don't, once Kip and Kobe and Jaron are gone, there's not a lot behind them that we know much about or that I would say there's huge expectations for. We're going to have to see kind of where those guys are and what they are.
Well, and just to kind of get into it, George, I'll throw it out to you, let you start if you want, but as far as we're concerned, not a whole lot of movement out of what we've been reporting up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that it seems like all signs point toward Nate Dreiling from Arkansas State. I think that these coaches are out recruiting right now, so maybe that's delaying some of that process. Now, is it a dead period starting on Saturday?
February 1st.
So, yeah Saturday.
Yeah.
So maybe that's when this gets done. I don't really know. I also, we haven't really heard any other names. The one name I would say is, and I put this in my mailbag earlier this week, but Zach Spavital was a name that was floated to me early on, which he was a GA at OU 2005 to 2007. Currently the linebackers coach at Maryland. Maybe. I mean, it feels like it's Nate
It seems
Dreiling.
like every time we check into one of these names that has been floated around, either they haven't talked to OU or, they're just not much there to grab onto.
Yeah, and the Nate Dreiling thing's interesting. He's been on the job at Arkansas State since January 2nd, and he hired 3 of his own assistants from Utah State. So he brought some guys with him. I talked to some folks at Arkansas State. He's bought a house in Jonesboro. OU would have to pay his buyout to get him, which, even before the Jim Knowles stuff, when they were thinking about hiring Nate Dreiling, they were going to have to do that anyways because he had already been hired by Arkansas State when that was all going down. So,
and OU is going to be okay with doing that. I mean, I've been told it would be around the range of $500,000 to buy him out of his contract.
Yeah, which is not anything crazy. And I think the biggest thing to remember with this, and maybe a new name comes, surfaces here in the next couple days. I don't know, but whoever they end up hiring, whether it's Nate Dreiling or somebody else, is basically the inside linebackers coach. Like that's been our understanding. Is they're going to coach the linebackers. They might get a co-defensive coordinator title, but I think the expectation is that Brent Venables is going to be calling the defense next year.
And I know the name, Brian Odom's been floated out there, but we haven't really heard anything that there's traction there.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think so.
And I think that's the thing, with Brent. I mean, and with Dreiling as a candidate, I mean, he was a 4-year, All-American,
Division II All-American at Pitt State, 491.
As a linebacker.
Yeah, 491 career tackle, school record. at Pitt State. Which, by the way, Pitt State's not, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Pitt State. Pitt State's a pretty good Division II program, from my
They're
understanding.
dominant for a while.
Yeah.
They were kind of like the
they've been very
NDSU
good.
for a while there. Yeah.
But he's risen quickly, through the coaching ranks. He spent, I think he started his career as a GA at Kansas, spent some time at Pitt State, and then was at Oregon for a year under Mario Cristobal as a defensive analyst, and then 2 years as the DC at New Mexico State, which honestly did a pretty good job at New Mexico State, turning that defense around for a couple years. And then I know a lot of people have been wanting to point out, oh, well, Utah State's defense was terrible last year. He was thrown into a situation where
He had to be the interim head coach a month before camp started.
yes, and I think he was the youngest last year. He was the youngest FBS coach in the country at 34 years old. So talk about a hell of an experience. And then also people need to realize there's a lot of people like, oh, Arkansas State's defense was terrible. He's only been at Arkansas State since January 2nd. So whatever Arkansas State did defensively last year, he wasn't there. He was the interim at Utah State. But
And
go ahead, Josh.
George, just briefly, I don't mean to interrupt you at all. For the context of it, so the year before he arrives at New Mexico State, they were 129 in defense for a per SP plus, which is, again, I like these for especially for smaller schools because it takes more accounting of who they're playing, what they have, that kind of stuff. The first year he was defensive coordinator, they jumped to 43. Brent Venables' his first year at Oklahoma, they went from 56 to 70. Like, they went backward. And so, again, I'm not trying to say Dryling's a better defensive coordinator than Brent Venables. That's not my point. I'm saying that is a staggering jump for a guy in year one with the lack of resources and general talent that there's going to be at a place like New Mexico State.
It's funny because like some people are like, well, what qualifications does he have to coach at Oklahoma? It's like, well, couldn't you say that about like a lot of these coaches? Like Brandon Hall came from Troy. Just because you come from, a lower program doesn't mean that you don't have the qualifications. And the reality is guys, he would coach the linebackers, inside linebackers. And the two things that if you're Brent Venables, and it sounds like he got highly recommended to Brent because he has no connection. This is not a some sort of connection going back to Clemson days or anything. Is he got highly recommended, but can he coach the linebacker position and can he recruit it? Those are the two things that you have to answer. And you look at his career and he hasn't coached at this level, but and maybe I shouldn't, but I do trust Brent to kind of make the right hire there. I think other than Ted Roof, I think he's made some pretty damn good defensive staff hires.
And what you're also saying there too is, if Brent has to call the defense, he'll call the defense.
Yeah.
And
the other thing too, Kerry, is some people have said, well, they were willing to pay $3 million for Jim Knowles. Why don't they go out and get somebody of that caliber or go spend money on some other big defensive coordinator? I don't know who that is, right? Like, I don't know who that is. I'm sure there's somebody out there that you could argue would be a great hire, but I think Brent has said it was either, one, I think as soon as Allie left, the plan was, all right, it's a make or break it year. I'm taking control of this thing, and I'm going to either go down with the ship or we're going to fix this thing. And I don't blame Brent for doing that. And I also just don't think that there was anybody else out there that he feels like he would trust to run it. And maybe that's a fault of Brent's, but I think Jim Knowles was a very, very rare thing in which they were like, oh, this is the one guy that it would make sense to pay up for that kind of money. And even then, I don't even know if Jim Knowles is worth $3.1 million, but that was the one guy that they circled that said, okay, if he's interested, we'll find the money for it. But I don't know if there's somebody else out there that fits that same bill.
That wants to leave.
Right.
That wants to get out. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, it was a perfect time, perfect opportunity to go, not poach, but get a coach that clearly wanted to get out of Ohio State. Now, you start talking to a Pete Golding. I don't think he wants to get out of Ole Miss. I mean, certainly you wouldn't go get a Pete Kwiatkowski. But
if you want to go get Phil Parker from Iowa, great. But I don't think Phil Parker's leaving Iowa.
No.
Fine.
And I think from OU's perspective,
Blake Baker at LSU, you couldn't get him to leave.
OU's perspective, I think that they're kind of all for this because there is no scapegoat. if this thing fails next year, there's no Seth Luttrell to fire. And not to say that Seth Luttrell shouldn't have been fired, but like this is it. You know, like he's running the defense. He made his hire at offensive coordinator with Ben Arbuckle. Like this is either we're gonna, win next year or we're gonna go down with the ship. That's what it feels like to me.
George, I'd be interested in all of you. Like I think it's a really interesting situation because OU's in this corner where I agree. They're not going to find a defensive coordinator that can be a better defensive coordinator than Brent Venables can be. Like I think we all accept that is just patently true. At the same time, the thing that may save him in 2025, his ability as a defensive coordinator, let's say he survives it, does that immediately then turn around and hurt him in 2026 when you do need to start progressing and you do need to start moving forward and maybe you have bought yourself a little time, a little equity? But, like, what are you going to go do? Fire the linebackers coach that you hired to bring in a DC and let them actually run the show? Or is that just become, well, Brent Venables is just the DC too, and damn what that means to the head coaching job? Like, I understand why he's doing it for 2025, but I worry that it paints him in a corner so that even if 2025 does work out, 2026 becomes more difficult.
I've thought about the same thing, Josh. And I continue to be like, and I've said it on here, my opinion is eventually he has to hand it off to be successful. Yeah. And I don't know who that is too. Maybe Dreiling comes in and they're like, man, this guy, he can run the show in a couple years, right? And Brent hands it off in 2027 or maybe hands it off next year. But I just keep coming back, just go win next year and then figure out the rest after. Like, I think that's...
No, I mean, I would do the same.
Yeah. I think that's Brent's probably his perspective and probably OU's as well. It's like, we get it, like that eventually they have to figure that part out. But I think the reality is they know they have to win and it's next year and then they'll figure the rest out. Like if they go 9-3 next year, which would be a great year, I think they'll be like, okay, now we can go figure out the other side of it and finding someone to maybe hand the defensive reins off to.
I tend to think that Brent would make this hire thinking very highly of Dreiling, and that would be the plan eventually, just to hand it off in a couple of years.
Yeah, hand it off to him, or if Dreiling does great, maybe he gets a DC job somewhere else and you bring someone else in, or maybe somebody else on staff could step into the role. I don't know. And
also on the Wes Goodwin front, we didn't mention him at all, but we do know that he's likely to be on staff as an analyst, which means they can pay him, a smaller salary, and then Clemson has to pay off the rest of what they're owed to him.
Very similar to the Matt Wells situation at Texas Tech a couple years ago, where OU brought him in as really a valuable piece as an offensive analyst, and he was still getting paid by Texas Tech because he's not a quote unquote full-time paid assistant.
That's another thing. Do they need so they're obviously, I think we all agree they're going to go down this path like the 2022 and 23 teams. Does Oklahoma go look for somebody like a Matt Wells that can help Brent with some of the, the balancing act he's got to do during game day, even not on game day, like just all the crap that you have to do as a head coach, having someone that has some of that experience leading it to take a few things off your plate like we know Matt Wells did at times?
Yeah, I think that they are looking into, some sort of staff member that could maybe help with game management. I don't know what that looks like.
Well, Marcus Freeman had that. I mean, he had a guy standing behind him, letting him know, like, okay, we go for 2 here, we go for 1. Or on the fake punt that he ran the team out with, like, he called that. Or I think Freeman explained that after, like, it was something we worked on in practice. He pointed out we should do that here. But, like, Brent could literally have a guy standing behind him on the, during games, helping him, like, okay, there's 1:52 left. You've got 3 timeouts. It's second down. Let's call a timeout here.
Right. I think that their OU is looking into, potential candidates for something like that. I don't know who that would be. Like, I have no idea what the names are on that, but somebody that could help with that. And maybe that's part of the attraction to somebody like Dreiling, who, I get it, he was just the interim last year, but he did probably learn a lot as a head coach at Utah State. I know they didn't win a ton. They were 4-8 a year ago, but he at least has some knowledge of game management, having to do it and thrown into that type of a role. But I do think that there's a chance that they hire somebody that their specific role is to do that. And it's funny because when I was in Denver, the year that Nathaniel Hackett was hired, and he was just a terrible head coach, couldn't manage a game, they hired somebody like mid-season, I can't remember his name, that came in and was basically like in Nathaniel Hackett's ear every single time of when he needed to like call a timeout or when to go for two. Like that's becoming more and more common across all of football, where you have somebody that is specifically doing that. And I think with Brent taking over as defensive coordinator, basically, I think OU and Brent knows that they're going to need somebody that can help him with that while he's also running the defense.
Eddie is I believe he's stumping for Connor Stallions to get that role.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I don't think Brent would listen to him, and I don't think he'll listen to the guy that they do hire. So I don't know it's going to matter. I'm serious. He's so dug into what he's doing. I don't. Do you guys sit here and think that he would?
I mean,
am I crazy?
I think in a make or break it year he would, 100%. His job's on the line.
I think he would. I think he would veer the other way and be more dug in on what he's doing and believing in what he's going to do. And I'm literally not trying to be negative on this.
Yeah, I disagree. I do think.
I hope that that's the case.
I also don't think Brent's like game management is as bad as sometimes people make it out to be.
No, it's not. I mean, but it does need some work.
I think it's more so.
But every time it comes up, it seems to really batter in the game.
Well, I think it's more of they just don't play complementary football at times, it feels like. And I don't know if that's that's not because he's not using his timeouts at the right time. Now, there's certainly instances where he's not using his timeouts when he needs to. And I had somebody ask me this week, they're like, could you come up with 3 examples? And the 3 examples I found, and there's more, but we forget that they had a delay a game on a field goal against Tulane that ended up moving them out of field goal range. They had the touchdown that Texas scored right before the half where OU was running players onto the field late that Brent probably should have called a timeout there. Texas scores on that play.
Robert Spears Jennings runs onto the field as they're snapping the ball.
The other one I came up with was the Missouri game when they convert the fake punt, they celebrate for too long, and they run out of time on the delay of game, and they move back 5 yards and aren't able to score a touchdown on that drive.
Didn't Arnold get sacked like twice too after that?
I think so. But those are 3 that it's like if he just has somebody in his ear, saying, "Hey, call timeout. Like we're gonna run out of time here." Like maybe the outcome's different. I don't know.
Or maybe you just have a hot play that you call if you're running out of time. Like get up to the line and call this.
Yeah.
Well, look at it from the flip as well. Can you name and I got that same question, George, and I'm terrible about that kind of stuff. Like I remember it in real time, but I never can go back and catalog it. Like I'm not good at that. But what I can say, can anybody here name a time when you're like, boy, Brent really got one there. Like he really snuck something in there. Like the Marcus Freeman against Georgia. Like I can't think of anything.
I mean,
like
the fake punt against Missouri was pretty good. I mean,
yeah. Now I will say he's aggressive, and I do like that. Like he'll go for it on fourth. He'll do some of that stuff, and I like that. I've never been one who's been like he tries too much and he fakes too much and does I like that stuff. I am one that believes in the analytics. You should be much more aggressive on fourth down than most coaches believe, and
I think it's like George said, though.
I
mean, he doesn't get credit for the good stuff he did. 2 years ago when they beat Texas, he did a great job of managing the clock right before halftime to get the ball back, and they went down and got a score.
And at the end of the game.
Yeah, and at the end of the game. So, I mean, he has had good moments.
Yeah, and even, but then he has moments like, I think was it before the half against Navy? I think they had to burn some timeouts on defense earlier in the quarter. It's just shit like that you remember the bad ones more than the good ones. There's definitely been times that they've run a good 2-minute drill, I think.
Yeah. Well, the Navy one, you had the 2 throws to Sam Franklin, and then out of a TV timeout, you call a timeout. That shouldn't happen.
Right. It's shit like that it's like, to Eddie's point, I guess. I don't know what does that analytics guy. What does the analytics guy help there? I guess. Yeah, and then how much is that on Joe John? It's all. I mean, I don't know, but at least we know they're looking into it and they're trying to figure it out. But I have no idea if it'll make a huge difference, if you'll notice it on game day. And the reality is, too, guys, with that, all coaches make these type of gaffes. Now, it feels like Oklahoma makes a lot of them, but like even in the national championship game, Marcus Freeman had the big gaff with the timeouts too, and kicking the field goal.
The field goal that wasn't
like it happens at all levels of football where the coaches it's like they go brain dead.
I mean, just about every game you watch, there's something that happens. Whether it's the one that drives me crazy is just when you have too many men in the backfield because your offensive tackle is too far back. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much all the coaching stuff. The GM stuff still in motion, still being worked on. They still are using Pete Rosenberg and his
Jake Rosenberg. There it is. Drink. There
we go. It's not a player. I'm sorry. I'm not taking the heat for that one. Jake Rosenberg and Randall Stevenson still around, still working on all that stuff. I don't think, George, help me out here. I don't think we're close to knowing who that GM is going to be. The Curtis Lofton stuff happened. We talked about that last week. We were trying to figure out is there going to be an interim person to kind of help fill that role? Haven't really found out any possibilities there. It almost feels like, they're going to feel like they're going to get to this point where they can hire a GM or at least hire an assistant GM that's going to come in and kind of help with that.
They don't really need an interim right now. Like, there's not a whole lot.
There's not a lot of portal activity.
Yeah, there's no portal activity.
And they've got Rosenberg's firm to help them with roster valuations,
right? And they've got
negotiations.
They've got guys under contract now after the player retention and you get through and guys are in winter workouts. So you don't really need one. I think they'd like to have one before the spring portal gets going. Just so they can attack that. And there's several, positions that I think they'll go after, cornerback and linebacker primarily. But they're going through that process, and I do think that it's pretty much Jake Rosenberg is, I think, offering some candidates that he knows. I know Joe C is kind of vetting some of them. Randall Stevenson's involved.
And there will be I think it's clear we need to make there will be no internal elevations in this.
Yeah, we don't believe so. I don't believe that's going to happen, but I think that you're going to see them go after somebody that has some NFL experience and is probably an up and comer. Probably a younger person, just because to get people to leave from the NFL in those front office positions is very hard. And once you get into the NFL, you pretty much have a job for life, it feels like, because somebody else will hire you in the front office. So that it's not like they're going to go hire somebody that's like obviously a GM for an NFL team right now, or even like a right-hand or third-hand man, for somebody in the NFL. I think it's going to be somebody that is an up-and-comer, well-qualified, and has some front office or personnel experience.
It's going to have to be somebody that looks at college now as a springboard to the NFL front office. Like, we were talking last week about the Mark Pantoni guy from Ohio State that kind of serves as their guy. Like, with his resume and how well they've done, you would think some NFL team would want to take a look at him at some point.
Yeah, and we'll see how much this is going to be an expensive hire too. Like, I don't know if you guys
think
saw.
So?
Oh yeah, because you look at what USC offered Notre Dame's GM Chad Bowden, I think $1 million to go to USC. And so I think the market is going to be somewhere in $500,000 to $1 million for a position like this, which is a pretty high number when you talk about that. And I think it's worth it if you can find the right person, because it's a very important piece of your program.
But it also is very scary if you're a football staff member, because how many people are you going to hire for this personnel department? How much of that is going to take away from revenue sharing when that comes around? Like, you're going to have to start gutting your football staff to take away, to be able to make room financially for some of these personnel directors that you're going to be hiring.
Yeah, and I don't know how big the front office is going to be. Like, I think they do want to have, obviously, a GM and maybe like a head scout or something like that. But I don't know. It's interesting, and I think OU doesn't want just somebody that's a scout. In that position, I think they want somebody that understands, value, contracts, how much money and how to, maybe even write contracts or negotiate those. And
Jake Rosenberg was tweeting about this yesterday. I mean,
you need somebody that
can do all these different things: the financial side of the personnel side of it,
evaluations,
basically be a CEO.
Yes, yeah, and finding that person is not an easy task, especially when college football is changing like it is.
Okay, I think the only other football related item, just to get out there, I think. And you mentioned it earlier about the $3 million for Jim Knowles. And I think the biggest question has been, well, why don't they use that money for something else? And I know I was talking to Josie Jr. about this last night after we did Family Business. It's not like OU went out and someone gave them a check for $3.1 million to go hire Jim Knowles. It was just like they committed to spending that money if you were going to get Jim Knowles. So it doesn't mean that they now have a bank account with $3.1 million that they can take that money and now spend it on tight ends and wide receivers. It just means if that donor, they want to go back to him and say, hey, that $3 million you wanted for Knowles, would you give that to personnel for NIL? And they could say yes or no, but most likely, they're probably going to say, no, that was for Knowles.
I think it's important, though, to note that OU, when it wants to spend money and thinks it's worth spending the money, they have it.
Yeah.
They have the people that are willing to come up with the money to go after people. And, we'll find out Ben Arbuckle's.
It's just like the buyout for Dreiling. It's like
they're
going to go to somebody and say, hey, it's going to cost $500,000 to buy this guy out. Can you help us out? And they're going to say, sure.
And we'll find out Ben Arbuckle's contract on Thursday at the Board of Regents meeting, and I expect that number to be probably around the top 10 in terms of offensive coordinator pay. So it's not like they're just not paying their assistants.
The other thing is, and I didn't even know this was the thing, but people were getting mad because OU is looking at hiring a construction firm for the West Side, and people are saying, why are you doing that? Because pay that money to the players. Another one of these things where I know a lot of people are very confused about how NIL works and where the money comes from, but it's basically, them trying to get ready, and then they don't have the money, but they'll see if they can go out and get the money.
For the stadium?
Right, yes.
Yes, correct. And the stadium thing, they've been putting that on the back burner for a while.
Yeah.
They still have, they want to get that done, but it's still probably a few years away before they actually get going on that. At least that's my understanding.
Well, and it's like everybody.
It's just another step in the process, and then everybody gets mad. They're like, "Well, there's no update on the baseball facility. That's already been approved. They've already hired a construction manager. They've already done all that." And Eddie might know more than I do, but I think the goal is to start construction on that after baseball season.
Yes, that's correct.
So people were like, "Oh, there's just another thing that they're passing over baseball or something." It's like, well, no, that's not true. Also, this isn't like a. Somebody was like, "Oh, they just want to do another study to see if they should do this." It's not a study. The West Side Stadium project, it's going to happen. They're just hiring a construction firm to get going on it.
And realize this is happening all over college football. Like Oklahoma State, they announced a big facilities deal a few years ago. They haven't talked about it since NIL became a thing. It's like everybody's putting this stuff on the back burner.
Well, they're doing it right now.
But not to the extent that they were doing. I mean, they're trying to do a softball stadium, which, they're doing, but like the soccer facility and the new indoor and all that stuff, they're not really talking about doing that anymore.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the football stadium.
No, I'm talking about at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, at the football stadium.
They're
redoing the entire inside right now.
Right. They couldn't even practice in there last spring because they were doing some stuff on the outside.
Did the entire remodel of all the seats and stuff.
But, things are getting done. Like, the Charlie Coe Golf Center is, in the middle of almost being finished with their new upgrades.
Yeah,
gymnastics.
I think that was private funding for the Coe Center. I don't know that for a fact, though.
And so is the West Side Stadium,
all this stuff is private funding. It's coming from donors.
Yeah.
NIL is private funding. It's just... Anyway, the point being, when Brent was first hired, they, those renderings kind of broke or they kind of got leaked of, the new athletic center that had like a pool in the back and all this stuff. Nobody's really talking about that stuff anymore because of NIL. I mean, that's just the way
that was
it's gone
that was also fake news, if I remember correctly. When they came out with those renderings, that was a company trying to be like, we want to be the ones that build this.
Right.
OU's not hired anybody to do that yet.
Yeah.
That's been put on the back burner too.
But they had announced the project.
Right. But the I think a lot of this stuff's been put on the back burner until they figure out the rev share and what's going on with all that. So,
which that is another very complicated thing that, right now people are flooding the judge or whatever it is, the NCAA versus House settlement that they're expecting to be done by July 1st, but people by the end of this month, people have to turn in their, like right now they got a bunch of like women's sports that are saying, they've already had their scholarships cut because of the impending revenue sharing. So I did read something from, was it Mitt Winter? That's the lawyer that On3 uses a lot, and he's talking about just some more hurdles to this thing. So I just think we're going to be stuck longer than anybody thinks in this NIL, pay for play situation that we're in now.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that stuff.
It's not real fun. So, all right. So really, yeah, that's I think all I had on my mind today as far as what was going on in Soonerland.
Well, what else is going on, guys, in your lives?
Well, you're getting closer and closer to William and Lauren making your wedding suit.
Yeah, well, we're talking to
meeting
them
with him today,
so that'll be fun.
Eddie said he wants a suit. Josh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why can't Eddie have a suit?
Because we've always known him as just being an Oklahoma tuxedo guy.
I mean, I've never worn an Oklahoma tuxedo to a wedding.
There's a lot of tension in here today, and I don't know what's going on.
Eddie's just being a dick today. I don't know any other way to explain it. You leave me no other way to explain it.
Okay.
Eddie, I love you. I'm on Carrie's side on this one. I don't know what's going on over there.
You know what? I'll break the tension. George, I have some news. We got your invite. Lovely invite. Great job. I know you had nothing to do with it, Aaron. Well done. Really, all good. We're not going to be there, buddy.
Oh, no. We'll move the date for you.
We will literally be like 24 hours having returned from a trip to Mexico with my brother and sister and a whole thing. So I'm like, there's no way I'm
sunburnt, hungover Josh is you don't want to.
Yeah.
You're better off not having him at the wedding, I think.
100%. Now I promise we're going to send a really nice gift. So you get the registry to me. We'll take care of that. But yeah, I was like, I want to let them know because I know numbers are always a pain with that stuff. So
this is the worst day of my life.
You should make.
I always imagine Josh McCuistion being at my wedding.
You should make him like physically have to go through the declining the RSVP.
Oh, he will. I mean, he'll still get. We'll still send Josh a formal invitation and everything, but that's okay, Josh. It's all right. We didn't want to invite you anyways.
I know you didn't, and that's fine. Like I know the obligation. I get it.
I'm kidding, Josh.
Josh is just going to randomly show up at your bachelor party to make up for it.
I am having a bachelor party in Austin, Josh, and you are more than welcome to come.
Oh God, that's what I like. That's what I need, George, is to go over and try to keep up with a bunch of young guys and make a complete ass of myself. So that'll be perfect. Yeah, I'll make it up to you there. I'll go humiliate myself in front of you and your buddies. That seems ideal.
I think it'd be awesome.
Don't do it. I'm asking you as your business partner to don't do it.
You mentioned the registry too. Funny thing, I just didn't realize the stuff we put on there because I was just like, we'll put on like a cool TV or something, or like just some cool shit on there. And
I told you to put like watches and shit on there.
Yeah, I don't think people do that. I think it's like kitchenware and
nobody really knows what people do.
House items,
And I don't want to buy you that stuff. Like if you put something cool that I would want on there, I'd buy it.
Carrie,
for you.
it's not just for me, man. Like just buy the cool knives or something that we've got.
Josh and Bob will tell you, I don't give a shit about your wives.
It's factual, and that's okay. Because I'm pretty sure they both feel the same. So we're all good. But no, that's what it is. Like, George, again, dude, I get it. It's all eye-opening. You're like, wait, this is what we're doing here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I remember, like, I put, like, a couple random shit things on there. And, like, one of them was, like, a tent. I was like, yeah, we'll go camping. I think I've used that tent once. And the entire time I've had it, and it was inside, and the girls were in it. Like, it was not useful at all. But, yeah, like, the plates and shit, I still got plates. I got, like, again, and you'll do this, too. Like, you've got the formal dinnerware and stuff.
Yeah.
I think we've used that once in the 15 years we've been married. Like, I don't have a lot of occasion for really high-end china.
Yeah, I want to buy you electronics.
I don't need any electronics.
You don't need like a Ninja thing for the kitchen or like a new air fryer that's
that stuff's on there. That's like kitchen stuff. But but I wanted to put on like there's so on the website or whatever that we went through, it like gives you like suggestions, and it was like there was one that was like adventures or like sports, and so I clicked on that. And so I clicked on sports, and it was like season tickets. I was like, we should put Thunder season tickets on our registry. And Aaron's like, no, George, that's not how this works. We can't put
But
Thunder
it was on the
season
registry?
tickets on there. What?
You could have put it on the registry?
Yeah, it was like, well, and it was just like, it suggests all sorts of things
Who
on
is
there.
she to say you can't put it on there then? If
Well, we're not going to put, I'm not, she's right. We don't need to be asking people for Thunder season tickets on our registry.
Well, I don't know about season tickets, but if you guys have picked 4 good home games you wanted to go to, yeah, I'd probably take care of you there.
So can I not just give you
season
cash?
Tickets is
No,
probably
you can. We'll have like a honey fund too. Like you can just donate to, our honeymoon or whatever. I'll take your cash.
You do on a regular basis. All right. You're used to it. You'll get some here tomorrow, I think. Anyway, Josh, anything hopping with you with the girls? You got any big trips planned?
My girls are we've settled kind of our travel plans for the year for the most part anyway. The girls are leaving. They're going into international country for the first time ever. This is going to be interesting.
Ooh, wow. Going on safari? You finally going to use those shirts that you wear all the time for the proper use?
We're going to Mexico twice. Okay. So it's not that glorious. Let's not get crazy. But we're going to take a cruise on spring break, which is basically my nightmare. So this could be worse than Disney. I may come back.
Is this a Disney cruise?
Severely pissed off. No, thank God it's not that. Like it could be worse. But no, we're taking one kind of towards the end of spring break. So I am not enthusiastic about that at all. But I'm never enthusiastic. And then we get there and I have a few drinks and the kids go play and it's all fine. So I'm sure it'll be okay. But then again, the other one I'm taking is the one. And George, I would reschedule it, but we've had to work with my family, I don't know, for 3 months on trying to find a date that worked for everybody. So we're going to have to abstain on that one. But like I said, we'll send a nice gift. It'll be fine. It's way better than having me there anyway. Because then you got to put in the meetings and introduce me to people, and you don't care to do that. I don't need to meet those people, so it's all good.
My dad does want to meet you, though, at some point. He's like,
we can absolutely do that. I would love to meet him.
He wants to talk offensive line with you.
Love it. I'm in.
He'll probably be more disappointed than I am about you not coming.
Well, I mean, okay. Now it's starting to hurt, George. Now it's getting a little like that. That's a little, now I'm wounded.
All right. I'm not going to ask somebody else sitting here how he's doing. We'll just end it. Thank you for tuning in, as always. YouTube channel, go check it out. We've got an interview up right now with Nick Benito that we just did last night. It's a great interview. He's not getting any money, George, from Casa Bonita.
What the hell?
No, they're not paying him anything or doing a deal with him or anything.
He needs to. Well, they probably don't have any money to give him anyways.
It's Matt Parker and Trey Stone. They have shit tons of money. They've been on television for like 20 years.
I wonder if they'll send the Broncos a cease and desist.
They have to operate like a business. They can't treat that like they're, like the restaurant doesn't have all that much money, even if they have a lot of money.
They should at least let them eat free.
He did say the
For
food was.
sure.
He did say the food was kind of crappy.
Oh yeah, it is. It's not. It's not great.
No, it's not, it's like having a TV dinner. It's like TV dinner Mexican food.
Yeah.
It's not good.
like
but I grew up with it. It's like Pedro's. Is it Pedro's? Would you put the flag up? Pedro's Mexican buffet.
Was it
Poncho's? Poncho's Mexican buffet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do those still exist in this world? I mean, Houston had to be the first city that just completely shut that shit down. With all the great Mexican food you have there.
It's like, I was talking to somebody about this the other day where they're like, why don't you go eat at this place? I'm like, because it's crap. Like, I can go anywhere in Houston and find really good Mexican food. Why the hell would I spend a moment there?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need any Mexican food recommendations when you're out of town, for sure.
No. Yeah, like I've been to Chicago and like, you should try this Mexican. No, I'm not doing that. No, thank you.
Just tell me the pizza places to go, and they'll.
Yeah, exactly. I'll hit up some pizza. You got some sausage joints. I'm interested in all that.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast. Like I said, go check out the YouTube page. Recruiting report is still up. Lots of great information there. And anything happens with the defensive staff coming together, we'll certainly do an instant reaction for that as well. So thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.